Hey everyone, so the first thing you're going to want to do is you are going to spray your canvas with water. I'm using a mister. I got it from Harbor Freight. You can use a regular spray bottle, but a mister works quite a bit better and they're not very expensive. So I am just using a flat brush. It's about an inch wide, and I am using this is craft paint, under $2. And I'm just covering the background while remembering where I'm going to put my light source, my sun or my moon, whatever you want yours to be, and just covering it straight out of the bottle. I'm not mixing it with any white or any color, but I am using water with it. And the reason why we are painting white, I'm sure you can see that it's blending so easily. And now I'm adding a little bit of white to my mixture because we're going to go into where the sun is. And I thought it would actually be a little bit more white than it is. So I'm going to rinse out my brush and I'm going to add more white. And you're going to want to keep a dish rag or something in your hand, because when you rinse out your brush, you're going to want to squeeze it dry every time, especially when you're using a makeup brush, which we're about to do that right now. Yeah, I just discovered makeup brushes and they are a game changer. So you can kind of see where our sun is. And then you're going to want to dip your makeup brush in water and then squeeze it out before you blend it. Squeeze it out, get as much water as you can so it should just be damp. And you're going to just blend out your periwinkle before you get into your white right away. And you can choose to let some of the drips show, because I kind of like the drips. Working in towards your light source and then out again. And this is just your background, so you can be pretty loose with this. The looser the better, I think. See, and it kind of continues to blend itself as the water drips. So I'm using my shadow color, which is a mixture of Prussian blue and raw umber, so like blue and brown. And now I'm going to show you all my colors I use, and I'm just using my same flat brush and I'm just pulling up very loosely and making sure they're all different lengths and distances apart from each other, because this is going to be our forest in the background. And you can see the paint is from our periwinkle is really starting to drip, so you may like that. I sometimes do, but on this one I wanted to blend it out, so I'm going to blend it out again. And on those distant trees, I also added periwinkle to it, and it's just a very little paint I'm using. And so this, I'm going to go into the foreground, covering up more of the white, and same mixture, blue, Prussian blue, and raw umber, kind of mixed together to get it a gray. And I'm just going through it and covering up the white. I'm using a little less periwinkle. But again, your paint should have so much water mixed with it at this time, because if it doesn't, you're not going to get that blending effect that you want. This is almost like just a wash. And now we're using our natural sea sponge and the same mixture of the shadow color, and we don't want to dab up into our trees, just on the ground in the foreground. Our distant trees, we want to leave those alone. And when you're dabbing, you can see I'm moving my hand different ways, not keeping it all the same, and I'm also squeezing it and letting it out, just trying to vary the different shapes it's giving, because you want it to look organic, not all the same, so keep twisting your hand. And I've done like blue and brown, and I just wet my canvas again, and I'm going to add some trees. These are distant trees, so the reason I wet the canvas is because these will start to blur, and we want these to be far in the distance. I started out as an oil painter, so this is a completely, and I've always done these kinds of dead forest. So it's a different technique for oil painting and acrylic, but this acrylic background way is really fun, because you really have no control of what it's going to do, and I kind of like that. But yeah, you just pull up, take your time, and once you get a feel for how much water you're supposed to add to your paint, this part is going to be so quick and easy. If you're just starting, I'm betting you're probably having your paint too thick if it's not making these thin lines. So make sure you can see I varied the different lengths. Some of them are close together, some of them are further apart. And now I'm using my same round brush and just adding a few branches here and there. And this is just from a pack of brushes I got from Michael's. I think the whole pack was under $10. You just want to get, these are watercolor brushes, I do believe. But you want a nice soft bristle with a nice pointy tip for your branches and your trees. And you want to make sure when you're doing these distant trees you don't put too many branches on it. For one, since the canvas is still wet, they are gonna blur, and they're gonna blur vertically, which could not be what you're looking for. So be sparse. And just take your time. So my canvas is dried quite a bit. So those trees that we just put on that are blurring, this new set of trees is going to be a lot clearer because the canvas is drying. So I'm using my shadow color, and I am just doing the same thing over again. I'm going to pull up from the bottom, nice and smooth, get thinner at the top, making sure I'm doing them different sizes. And you can see it's a lot starker line, so that's automatically going to make it seem like it's closer to you. And just pull up, and then we're going to add some little branches. And get in the habit of not putting trees that are the same height next to each other, because your eye will get drawn there and it will be uncomfortable. So just add some branches. This is such a good way to learn how to paint because there's a couple different techniques and it gets you used to doing thin lines. I love doing these trees, it's so relaxing to me. Remember, your paint should be, like I said, the consistency of like cough syrup, so mix it a lot on your palette. Maybe in the next video I'll show my palette more so you can see what I'm doing. and just take your time. I'm doing this in a class, so I'm going pretty quick, but I've also edited this video because I still need time to look at it and consider what I'm going to put, where I'm going to put, step back and look at it. So adding some branches coming up from the bottom. So if your paintbrush runs out of paint and you want your tree to be longer, like this, reload your paintbrush, and then starting lower, pull up through where you ran out of paint, keep going, and then less pressure and less pressure. And I'm actually using my pinky on the canvas to guide me. So see how it gets nice and thin as you get towards the top. And then you can see I have my pinky guiding me as I am making the branches. And don't put too many branches, unless you want to. And then you can add some little twigs or some little branches off those branches. I think it's key when you're painting just to remember to take your time. I never start a painting and finish it in the same setting. Even this one, this is a painting I did in class. I'm definitely going to do some more detailing when I get home. And painting is one of those things that if you keep working at it and just spending some time doing it, you're inevitably going to improve and get better. A lot of it's just, getting a feel for the paint, and you're going to have these eureka moments when you're like, oh, I've got it. And it's going to just, I don't know, I'm so glad I'm a painter. I don't know what I would do without this creative release. And for me, there's something so much more satisfying. Not that I know how to do artwork on a computer, but I really like actually creating something that's tangible on a canvas. So, I'm sorry, I jumped ahead in the video. I put that pathway in, and now I am adding these boulders. I'm using my flat brush, the same brush we used on the background, the periwinkle. Just dabbing it in with this shadow color. And that pathway, I used the same brush, and I just started out, and I just pulled it forward. It was very loose. So if your sun is stark, mine's blurry, you may want to add some shadows. My trees are still wet, so I'm just going to use my round brush and paying attention to where your light source is. You're going to just kind of pull down and add some shadows. Now if it's very foggy like mine, you really wouldn't have harsh shadows, so these are pretty light. And then you're going to do the same with the rocks. And you can see I'm using the paint that's still wet. I'm not adding paint because the shadows should almost be see-through. So now I've got more of my shadow color, and I'm just going through on my ground and adding some little patches of grass. And so far we've only used white, periwinkle, and the shadow color, which is raw umber, and Prussian blue. So I'm just adding these using my round brush, and we've only used a flat brush and the same size round brush. I'm just adding these around where the rocks are. Another thing I like to do is before I add these patches of grass, I would actually take an old toothbrush and splatter some paint down in there. But I'm in my friend's shop right now, so I didn't want to use a toothbrush, and there were lots of painters behind me, so yeah, I decided to not do the toothbrush. But at home I would definitely do the toothbrush. So I'm just adding some teal, introducing a new color, and putting some grass, like bringing some grass out of those shadowy grass areas. Just giving more definition. And you see I'm choosing whatever color I want to use. I'm not paying attention to like green grass, blue sky. And here I am adding a birch tree. So my paint is getting a little bit thicker with this white because you don't want it to be see-through. So it's probably more the consistency of, I don't know, Italian dressing maybe? Maybe ranch dressing? So just white and a little bit of shadow color, just a tiny bit, just pulling up. And then adding just a little one. Something to keep in mind is when you're doing trees, especially ones like these birch trees, using an odd number is really the way to go. So I'm adding these dark spots using just a piece of torn cardboard, like a, not corrugated cardboard, but like say like a macaroni and cheese box. Like just a little tiny piece, and just pulling across. This is something a lot of artists would use a palette knife for, but since these are so tiny, I feel like cardboard has more control. And it definitely gives a different texture than using a brush. So if you try to use a brush, it just doesn't work as good. And the canvas that I'm working on is 16 by 20, so if you're using a bigger canvas, then maybe you could pull out the palette knife, but I still prefer the cardboard. Now I'm going to start detailing these and using my shadow color, because even though the bark is, or the trunk is white, the branches are, they almost look black. So just doing kind of the same way. Birch tree branches and aspen tree branches are kind of long and spindly. I don't know what kind of trees the ones we first painted are. They're kind of just made up, maybe dead pine trees. So just using, this is actually a liner brush. This is the first time we're using our liner brush. This is a long, skinny brush, and like I said, I'm going to go through and show you all the brushes and paint that I used to make this. Liner brushes are really good for if you want to do hair or long pieces of grass, branches. It's kind of hard to see on the video, but I am making really tiny skinny branches. And this is another brush that you'll have that eureka moment once you start getting the hang of using it. You're going to love this brush. This is a brush you don't want to let hang out in the water because it will definitely start to lose its shape pretty quick. So this is one I usually rinse each time I'm done using it, and just in my water bottle. And you don't want to let it sit in your water on the bristles down. So I'm just adding some more grasses and some twigs growing up from the ground. Just some more visual interest. When I'm doing a landscape, that's where a lot of, I notice for me, where my eye is drawn to. It's like, if I were in that painting, where would I be walking around? So adding some branches to the top of these birch trees because they were looking a little naked. Just detailing. And like I said, this is in a class, so kind of a little bit in a rush. But I'm really starting to like how the painting is coming together. This is really good for me too, because sometimes I get caught up in over detailing things, and painting loose like this is good. Now I'm using my natural sea sponge and plain mixture of our shadow color, so it's almost black, and just going over the rocks and then also the ground, just adding some weird little spots. And you can see I'm moving my canvas forward to get the bottom of the canvas so it doesn't give a halo effect. Now I'm adding some cracks and putting a shadow at the very bottom of the rocks. Just making them look more like rocks. Now, this is how I do little pebbles. I'm just putting little dots of that shadow color here and there. And like I said, if you were using your toothbrush and did the paint splattering, you might already have some of these. But I'm just putting little dots here and there, kind of sporadically. You don't want to have them distant, like all the same distance apart. Then I'm using the highlight color, which is almost the color of the birch trees, and just going on top of that. And it gives the effect of a little rock with a shadow underneath it. Now I'm going to add I'm using up my flat brush again. So now we've used a total of 3 brushes. I'm just adding some highlights on my boulders or rocks. Pay attention to where your light source is. Since this is such a hazy painting, your light source is not going to be very dramatic. So I'm adding some horizontal lines because it helps show where the ground is. And now I'm using something called mixing white. This is different than the white we use for our sun in the background and what we've been painting with. That was titanium white. It's just an opaque white. This mixing white it's like a clear white almost. So It's used for mixing paint. I never use it for that. I use it for creating fog and um, pushing areas of my painting further back. It'll also, with acrylic, it's hard to blend. So this will, if you do get a stark line and you want it to be in your distance, putting this haze over it will definitely push it into the distance. So I'm paying attention to where my rocks are, and you can add some of this mixing white down in the bottom and it'll look like fog hanging in the distance, and it'll really bring your foreground to the front. And you're going to want to make sure your painting is completely dry. So I always, when I'm at home painting, I always have a blow dryer next to me, and I would definitely blow dry my canvas before I do this step, just to make sure. And I'm using my flat brush, some water, and mixing white. And I'm making sure this brush has been super cleaned. Before I start this step, I also go to my sink and get fresh water and clean my makeup brush and my flat brush really good. Make sure there's no paint in there, and you're just using your mixing white and water. And you can use your makeup brush too to blend if it's not blending. But sometimes I will go over my entire canvas with this mixing white and then do new trees in front of that, especially if it's like a rainforest setting or a really hazy setting. But on this one, I'm just kind of being a little bit sporadic, just adding more haze. And just kind of stepping back, seeing where I want to add this haze. You can see this a lot better when you're painting. It's kind of hard to see in this video, but it definitely adds. You can see it a little bit better in the bottom. Just be loose with it, and it pushes those trees back to where you want them. It's kind of interesting when you're painting, you start to realize the tricks you can play on your eye to show depth. Because I'm being very loose with this. I'm just not going over my boulders because I want this to be in the foreground. And you can, like I said, you can use your makeup brush here. It was blending fine without it, so I didn't feel the need to get it out. Going over some of the path in the distance. And like I said, I'm going to detail this some more when I get home, but this is coming to the end of our class, and I want to show you the materials that I used. But yeah, I like how this turned out. Okay, so now I want to show you the materials I used to make this painting. So starting out with my whites, I used two different kinds of white. I used titanium white. You can also use craft paint for this, it works just as well. This is the white I used in the end called mixing white. I don't use this for mixing my colors. I pretty much just use it for fog. And then I started out with this, just this cheap periwinkle. I think you should choose whatever color you like. Make it your own. Don't try to copy this painting exactly. And then I use this for the grass. I like this brand of craft paint, it's pretty good. And then this is what I use for my shadow colors. I used raw umber. I like this raw umber a lot. This brand and everything, it's got a nice richness. And then I use this craft paint of Prussian blue, and I like this Prussian blue. You can see you can mix them together. All different brands. Here are my brushes. Let me show you this first, because I did this video already and I forgot to show you this. I used a natural sea sponge and a towel to dry your brushes. And then here's my brushes. I used this to start out with. It's a flat. All the brushes are soft bristled. I used this for my trees. It's a round brush with a nice point. I used this liner. This is for my branches and my twigs. I also use this to sign my painting. I didn't do that yet because I am not done yet. And then here is my makeup brush. Got this off Amazon. For a pack of them was I think under 10 bucks. And here is my painting, how I left it. I'm still going to do a little bit more detailing on it, but it could certainly be called done as is. So I hope this helped you and maybe inspired you to paint. And if you do, please tag me in it or send me a DM and show me what you come up with. I would love to see it. So thanks for watching, and yeah, go try painting. Bye.